many ceremonial swords that we have here today. But first, I would like to welcome our elected officials that have joined us. We have Supervisor Calloway. She's here. We have Supervisor Baumdorf is here. Vice Mayor of Angels Camp, Jen Davis Herndon. City Council Member Caroline Shirado. Am I missing any other elected officials?
Yes, I'm here.
So, if I am, welcome, and I'm sorry if I missed you. But today's a really special day, and so one of the driving forces of this day has been our museum director and our Calaveras Visitors Bureau Executive Director, Martin Hubbardy. So I'd like to invite Martin up at this time. Martin?
Who knew that 70 degrees was so hot? Thank you all for coming. This is a big, big day for everybody here at the museum. I have an amazing team here. Thank you so much. One of the greatest things that's come out of doing this exhibit has been making a friendship with that lady right over there, Sandy Lima. You are amazing. I've enjoyed every minute, and thank you so much for all that you've done to make this happen. I would also like to thank Grant Armstrong, who designed it. We were looking for something that would attract attention from the road, and I think it does that. And also, we were looking to do something that we could add to every year. The Visitors Bureau is actually doing a series of contests, and what we hope to do at the end of the year, with the photographs, with the drawings, with the cookies that are made, is create a fund where we can actually make money to sustain this. Because what we would like to do is continually add to this exhibit every year. If you have artifacts that you would like displayed, please let us know. I do apologize, this is the frog jump, and it just melts my heart anytime I come out and see the kids jumping on it. Plus, I start all my tours with kids here because they jump. They're fantastic for the rest of the museum. This will be replaced with a permanent frog jump. We ended up having to do it in vinyl because what they sent us didn't work. But in any case, please enjoy the exhibit. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to add, let me know. I would like to hand it over to the Calaveras Community Foundation President, Linda Kangetter.
Thanks, Martin. I'm not very good at using these things. We've been Zooming for the last 2.5 years, as everyone knows. No in-person speaking, but on behalf
Closer to your mouth.
Okay.
Kiss the mouth.
On behalf of Calaveras Community Foundation, I'd like to, first of all, congratulate the museum for a wonderful exhibit and all the people who helped make it happen, including Bob and Sandy Lima and RG Moody and of course Martin Hooker, but everyone who worked to make this happen. This should be a great resource and a really fun thing, not just for the people who live in this county, but for all those visitors. Our job at Calaveras Community Foundation is to use the money. I can't compete. Our job at the Community Foundation is to use funds entrusted to us by our donors to improve and to enrich the lives of the residents of our county. We do this in a lot of ways through scholarships. We just completed awarding a number of scholarships to students in various high schools in the county. We have donor-advised funds, field of interest funds, supporting funds, some projects, including our partnership or sponsorship, I should say, of the Vitalent blood drives. And last and certainly not least, our competitive grant program. That will be held this summer, so if you're looking for funds for a nonprofit project in the county, please check out our website. We were very, very pleased to be able to partner with the Museum Foundation, the Museum, the Visitors Bureau, to help make this project come to life. We are very, very proud of the results. So this is exactly what our funds are intended to be used for. Thank you. Oh, by the way, there are a number of board members here. Brent Harrington, Cheryl Hillis, Maria Calloway, Sarah Lunsford, Mary Jane Ginocchio, and Terry Bourdoin. And I'm here, I'll be around for a while, so if you have any questions, please find one of us. A couple of us have on name tags.
Linda, how do we get our funds?
How do we get our funds?
Do we take donations from the public? We want you to pass a bucket
Do we
around
take
here.
donations? Yes, ma'am, we do. We love donations. We have a lot of very regular donors, and we are incredibly grateful for those donations because that's what enables us to do our work. We are an all-volunteer organization. None of us gets paid for our time, so that the money that comes to us from our donors goes to work in this county, and we try to spread the funds throughout the county and award grants to new projects in new parts of the county so that everyone in the county can enjoy the results of the generosity of our donors and our efforts.
This is quite the day. We're so happy to finally bring this to an opening. We've been working on it for a really long time.
Closer.
Sorry. Usually I don't have a problem getting it too loud, or too soft, I should say. Anyway, for generations, a lot of people in the community have donated items from the Frog Jump, from the city's involvement with Frog Jump, to the museum and also to the fairgrounds. And people involved over the last, almost a century knew that this should be preserved somehow, and then you see all the fun that went on. So I've heard many families talking about donating things here to the museum. They went into safekeeping, they were cataloged. Some of them have been part of the original Frog Jump exhibit here. And also at Frogtown, people would donate things, but there was just a whole library of old programs, old advertisements, and photos. So there were a couple of people that really had this in their heart, and this goes back about 30, 40 years. Keith Talia was a Fair Board member, and he really championed this cause. Also, when Buck King was on the Fair Board, and then later he was the CEO out at Frogtown, he really had this idea, and he really pursued it. I helped him catalog a lot of things out there about 30 years ago that were put into storage. Now, over the years, we all agreed that something should be done, but there were two basic questions, and nobody had the answer. That was, where would we put it, and how would we pay for it? So time went on, and the idea of the exhibit went on for, 20, right, Tim, yeah. Anyway, 10, 20, 30 years up until today, and it all came to fruition when Tad Fullendorf took me aside at a historical society meeting in San Andreas and said, I really think you should get serious about trying to do this. So that started a conversation about 5 years ago, and casually we went backwards and forth. We wanted it to happen, but again, those two questions were in the way. So about 3 years ago, Tad came up with this brilliant idea of applying for this grant from the Community Foundation because we thought it would fit into the parameters that they were interested in. So we went ahead and we did that, and lo and behold, it was accepted, and we were thrilled, but that was the end of 2019. So just as everything is shutting down, we're trying to get started. So things kind of languished there, stalled out for a while. But in that time period, magic happened, and Martin arrived here at the museum. So with his creative ideas, we were able to really kick this off about, a year and a half ago, I guess. So we've been working hard on that. And then the true magic came when Grant Armstrong did the graphics, and that's what brought it all to life. So that's what we're here today to celebrate, and I hope that you all have fun. We have all kinds of goodies over here. We have frog jumping for all of the kids. But, before we start on the fun part of things, I want to point out that I've given you a little idea of what happened in the recent past, but the people in the past that have really made this happen, I think we owe them all really a huge thanks. First, to Mark Twain down here on the end. You know, Mark was here in 1864. He wrote this story about a jumping frog that was first published in 1865, which was 157 years ago. So that's pretty impressive, right? So about 50 years after that, the City of Angels had the main street paved. So a group formed called the Angels Camp Boosters to celebrate that and bring a frog jump into the fun. So that's when the frog jump really started. And the boosters perpetuated it on and on and on until they kind of ran out of steam. And at that point, the fair board appointed our frog jump boosters to take it over. Did I screw it up? I am, oh, okay. Anyway, from 1928 to probably the early 2000s or so, the boosters perpetuated this event, and then the Frog Jump Committee took over. And I want to point out that a lot of our Frog Jump Committee people are down here under the tree conducting a frog jump, which is most important and appropriate. So we hope all the kids will join in on that. So I also want to be sure that we thank our Frog Jump teams and our Frog Jump families that have participated in this over the last, some of them 50 years. So with that said, I want to just thank you all for being here, and most of all, thanks to Mark Twain.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sandy. We have today two very special guests that are going to cut the the ribbon to open our exhibit. That's Jackie Hines, seated in the museum's frog throne. Many of you might remember Jackie from her years as the Angel City Camp administrator, as well as her many community activities, which she still does today. She still does Historical Society and all the things that she can do. Her late husband, Jerry Hines, was a driving force in the Angels Camp Boosters Club, and their entire family has lived and breathed the frog jump for generations. Where's Bria? Bria. Here's our current champion, Bria. Can you come up here, sweetie? Maybe come stand by your grandma. With Jackie is her granddaughter, Bria Hines, who is last year's Jumping Frog Jubilee champion. Bria will be back to defend her title this year. Bria is the third generation of Hines family of Angels Camp to figure prominently in the annual event, which will be held at Frogtown this next month. I guess it's only the 30th, May 19th through the 22nd. So we have Jackie, and I know that we have two of her children are here, Shauna and Lane. And then we have Arthur here, and we also have the fourth generation here. So do you guys want to come up and join your mom up here? That would be great. Arthur and Hannah and the kids. So, folks, this is 4 generations of frog jumpers. That's awesome. Let's give them a hand. Those babies are coming right now. Hannah and Arthur and the littles. Past winners includes Bria's uncle Mike Nash, who won the competition in 2006. I don't know, is Mike here? He's here. And her cousin Casey Nash, who won in 2014. And her cousin Rachel Nash, who finished second right behind Bria last year. That was a family battle there. The family is part of the Calaveras County Frog Jockeys that were actually created, I think, John can correct me if I'm wrong, in 1984. Mike Nash and John Kitchell were sitting on the lawn and thought, we can have our own frog team. So they created a frog team that's gone for several generations, and now there's spin-offs. There's Calaveras Frog Jockeys Heinz, Calaveras Frog Jockeys Nash, Calaveras Frog Jockeys Mitchell, Calaveras Frog Jockeys Zilke, and the Foothill Froggers, which they're former champions right here, and another generation of kind of a spin-off, I would say, of Calaveras Frog Jockeys. So since the Kitchell and Nash and Heinz families have repeatedly finished in the top 8 spots of the Frog Jump Grand Finals, and they have won 9 times. So the original Calaveras Frog Jockeys and their offspring, they have won 9 times, so that's pretty amazing. I think what we'd like to do now is have Jackie and Bria and all the family come over here.
Lori, do you want me just to bring it over?
Oh, we could do that. Would that be easier? It's heavy. It's heavy. Okay, Grandma's bossing me around over here. On behalf of the Calaveras County Fairgrounds, the Calaveras Community Foundation, the Angels Camp Museum Foundation, the Calaveras Visitors Bureau, and all the others, the City of Angels Camp, we open the Frog Jump exhibit.
Yay!
And please take time to see all the historical facts we have here, the things that we have upstairs, and we have hot dogs. Friends of the Fair have some beverages over there. We also have shaved ice over here. And these cornhole things, they're meant to use. So kids, and come see if you can jump as far as the world record. Who knows the world record? Say it right off the top of your head.
21 feet.
Rosehead River.
21 feet, 5 3/4 inches. Okay, so, John Kitchell, I think it's a year you break it. What do you think?
Yeah, he's got to get in line. He's got to wait.
Okay. As we always tease John about that. So, thank you, Frog Jump Committee, and thank you, everyone. This has been a great morning, and we are so excited to have this exhibit open. So enjoy your day. Thank you.
Beer and wine. Actually, Sandy, can we get a picture? There you go.
We did our duty,
Yes, we did.
and we had fun.
For the day right there. Thanks, buddy. Good luck, good luck. Oh, yeah.
Don't touch it. Scream at it. Scream at it.
Why not?
We went to the same school. We went to school together, but different schools. Figure that one out. Okay. Oh, I just think it's... Lemon. Oh, no, no.
Watch out, they bite.
Give it a kiss.
Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County by Mark Twain. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County by Mark Twain, 1835 to 1910. From the Saturday Press, November 18, 1865. Republished in The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County and Other Sketches, 1867, by Mark Twain, all of whose works are published by Harper and Brothers. In compliance with the request of a friend of mine, who wrote me from the East, I called on good-natured, garrulous old Simon Wheeler, and inquired after my friend's friend, Leonidas W. Smiley, as requested to do, and I hereunto append the result. I have a lurking suspicion that Leonidas W. Smiley is a myth, and that my friend never knew such a personage, and that he only conjectured that if I asked old Wheeler about him, it would remind him of his infamous Jim Smiley, and he would go to work and bore me to death with some exasperating reminiscence of him as long and as tedious as it should be useless to me. If that was the design, it succeeded. I found Simon Wheeler dozing comfortably by the barroom stove of the dilapidated tavern in the decaying mining camp of Angels, and I noticed that he was fat and bald-headed, and had an expression of winning gentleness and simplicity upon his tranquil countenance. He roused up and gave me good day. I told him a friend had commissioned me to make some inquiries about a cherished companion of his boyhood, named Leonidas W. Smiley, Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, a young minister of the gospel, who he had heard was at one time a resident of Angel's Camp. I added that if Mr. Wheeler could tell me anything about this Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, I would feel under many obligations to him. Simon Wheeler backed me into a corner and blockaded me there with his chair, and then sat down and reeled off the monotonous narrative which follows this paragraph. He never smiled, he never frowned, he never changed his voice from the gentle flowing key to which he tuned his initial sentence. He never betrayed the slightest suspicion of enthusiasm, but all through the interminable narrative there ran a vein of impressive earnestness and sincerity, which showed me plainly that, so far from his imagining that there was anything ridiculous or funny about his story, he regarded it as a really important matter, and admired its two heroes as men of transcendent genius in finesse. I let him go on in his own way, and never interrupted him once. Reverend Leonidas W. Reverend Lee... Well, there was a feller here once by the name of Jim Smiley in the winter of '49, or maybe it was the spring of '50. I don't recollect exactly, somehow, though what makes me think it was one or the other is because I remember the big flume wasn't finished when he first came to the camp. But anyway, he was the curiousest man about always betting on anything that turned up you ever see. If he could get anybody to bet on the other side, and if he couldn't, he'd change sides. Anyway, that suited the other man would suit him. Anyway, just so's he got a bet, he was satisfied. But still he was lucky, uncommonly lucky. He most always come out winner. He was always ready and laying for a chance. There couldn't be no solitary thing mentioned but that feller'd offer to bet on it, and take any side you please, as I was just telling you. If there was a horse race, you'd find him flush or you'd find him busted at the end of it. If there was a dog fight, he'd bet on it. If there was a cat fight, he'd bet on it. If there was a chicken fight, he'd bet on it. Why, if there was 2 birds setting on a fence, he would bet you which one would fly first. Or if there was a camp meeting, he would be there regular to bet on Parson Walker, which he judged to be the best exhorter about here, and he was too, and a good man. If he even see a straddle-bug start to go anywheres, he would bet you how long it would take him to get to wherever he was going to, and if you took him up, he would foller that straddle-bug to Mexico, but what he would find out where he was bound for, and how long he was on the road. Lots of the boys here has seen that Smiley and can tell you about him. Why, it never made no difference to him. He'd bet on anything. The dangest feller. Parson Walker's wife laid very sick once, for a good while, and it seemed as if they weren't going to save her, but one morning he came in, and Smiley up and asked him how she was, and he said she was considerable better. Thank the Lord for his infinite mercy, and coming on so smart that with the blessing of Providence she'd get well yet. And Smiley, before he thought, says, "Well, I'll risk 2.5 she don't anyway." This year Smiley had a mare. The boys called her the 15-minute nag, but that was only in fun, you know, because, of course, she was faster than that, and he used to win money on that horse, for all she was so slow and always had the asthma, or the distemper, or the consumption, or something of that kind. They used to give her 200 or 300 yards start, and then pass her underway, but always at the fag end of the race she'd get excited and desperate-like, and come cavorting and straddling up, and scattering her legs around limber, sometimes in the air and sometimes out to one side amongst the fences, and kicking up more dust and raising more racket with her coughing and sneezing and blowing her nose, and always fetch up at the stand just about a neck ahead, as near as you could cipher it down. And he had a little small bull pup, that to look at him you'd think he warn't worth a cent, but to set around and look ornery and lay for a chance to steal something. But as soon as money was up on him, he was a different dog. His underjaw'd begin to stick out like the forecastle of a steamboat, and his teeth would uncover and shine like the furnaces. And a dog might tackle him, and bullyrag him, and bite him, and throw him over his shoulder 2 or 3 times, and Andrew Jackson, which was the name of the pup, Andrew Jackson would never let on but what he was satisfied, and hadn't expected nothing else, and the bets being doubled and doubled on the other side all the time till the money was all up, and then all of a sudden he would grab that other dog just by the joint of his hind leg and freeze to it. Not chaw, you understand, but only just grip and hang on till they throwed up the sponge, if it was a year. Smiley always come out a winner on that pup, till he harnessed a dog once that didn't have no hind legs because they'd been sawed off in a circular saw, and when the thing had gone along far enough and the money was all up, and he come to make a snatch for his pet holt, he see in a minute how he'd been imposed on, and how the other dog had him in the door, so to speak, and he 'peared surprised, and then he looked sort of discouraged like, and didn't try no more to win the fight, and so he got shucked out bad. He gave Smiley a look, as much as to say his heart was broke, and it was his fault for putting up a dog that hadn't no hind legs for him to take hold of, which was his main dependence in a fight, and then he limped off a piece and laid down and died. It was a good pup, was that Andrew Jackson, and would have made a name for himself if he'd lived, for the stuff was in him, and he had genius. I know it, because he hadn't no opportunities to speak of, and it don't stand to reason that a dog could make such a fight as he could under them circumstances if he hadn't no talent. It always makes me feel sorry when I think of that last fight of his'n, and the way it turned out. Well, this here Smiley had rat terriers, and chicken cocks, and tom cats, and all of them kind of things, till you couldn't rest, and you couldn't fetch nothing for him to bet on but he'd match you. He catched a frog one day and took him home, said he'd calculated to educate him, and so he never done nothing for 3 months but set in his backyard and learn that frog to jump. And you bet he did learn him too. He'd give him a little punch behind, and the next minute you'd see that frog whirling in the air like a donut, see him turn one somerset, or maybe a couple if he got a good start, and come down flat-footed and all right like a cat. He got him up so in the matter of catching flies and kept him in practice so constant that he'd nail a fly every time as far as he could see him. Smiley said all the frog wanted was education, and he could do most anything, and I believe him. Why, I've seen him set Dan'l Webster down here on this floor, Dan'l Webster was the name of the frog, and sing out, "Flies, Dan'l, flies!" And quicker'n you could wink, he'd spring straight up and snake a fly off in the counter there, and flop down on the floor again as solid as a gob of mud, and fall to scratching the side of his head with his hind foot as indifferent as if he hadn't no idea he'd been doing any more'n a frog might do. You never see a frog so modest and straightforward as he was, for all he was so gifted. And when it come to fair and square jumping on a dead level, he could get over more ground at one straddle than any animal of his breed you ever see. Jumping on a dead level was his strong suit, you understand, and when it come to that, Smiley would ante up money on him as long as he had a red. Smiley was monstrous proud of his frog, and well he might be, for fellers that had traveled and been everywheres all said he laid over any frog that ever they see. Well, Smiley kept the beast in a little lattice box, and he used to fetch him downtown sometimes and lay for a bet. One day a feller, a stranger in the camp he was, come across him with his box and says, "What might be that you've got in the box?" And Smiley says, sorter indifferent like, "It might be a parrot, or it might be a canary, maybe, but it ain't. It's only just a frog." And the feller took it and looked at it careful and turned it round this way and that and says, "So 'tis. Well, what's he good for?" "Well," Smiley says, easy and careless, "he is good enough for one thing, I should judge. He can out-jump any frog in Calaveras County." The feller took the box again and took another long, particular look and gave it back to Smiley and says, very deliberate, "Well," he says, "I don't see no pints about that frog that's any better'n any other frog." "Maybe you don't," Smiley says. "Maybe you understand frogs and maybe you don't understand 'em. Maybe you've had experience and maybe you ain't only a amateur, as it were. Anyways, I've got my opinion, and I'll risk $40 that he can out-jump any frog in Calaveras County." And the feller studied a minute and then says, kinder sad like, "Well, I'm only a stranger here and I ain't got no frog, but if I had a frog, I'd bet you." And then Smiley says, "That's all right, that's all right. If you'll hold my box a minute, I'll go and get you a frog." And so the feller took the box and put up his $40 along with Smiley's and set down to wait. So he sat there a good while thinking and thinking to himself, and then he got the frog out and prized his mouth open and took a teaspoon and filled him full of quail shot, filled him pretty near up to his chin, and set him on the floor. Smiley he went to the swamp and slopped around in the mud for a long time, and finally he catched a frog and fetched him in and gave him to this feller, and he says, "Now, if you're ready, set him alongside of Dan'l with his 4 paws just even with Dan'l's, and I'll give the word." Then he says, 1, 2, 3, git! And him and the feller touched up the frogs from behind, and the new frog hopped off lively, but Dan'l give a heave and heisted up his shoulders, so like a Frenchman, but it warn't no use, he couldn't budge. He was planted as solid as a church, and he couldn't no more stir than if he was anchored out. Smiley was a good deal surprised, and he was disgusted too, but he didn't have no idea what the matter was, of course. The feller took the money and started away, and when he was going out at the door, he sort of jerked his thumb over his shoulder, so at Dan'l, and says again, very deliberate, "Well," he says, "I don't see no points about that frog that's any better'n any other frog." Smiley, he stood scratching his head and looking down at Dan'l a long time, and at last says, "I do wonder what in the nation that frog throwed off for. I wonder if there ain't something the matter with him. He 'pears to look mighty baggy somehow." And he catched Dan'l up by the nape of the neck and hefted him and says, "Why, blame my cats if he don't weigh 5 pounds," and turned him upside down, and he belched out a double handful of shot, and Then he see how it was, and he was the maddest man. He set the frog down and took out after that feller, but he never catched him, and... Here Simon Wheeler heard his name called from the front yard, and got up to see what was wanted. And turning to me as he moved away, he said, "Just set where you are, stranger, and rest easy. I ain't gonna be gone a second." But, by your leave, I did not think that a continuation of the history of the enterprising vagabond Jim Smiley would be likely to afford me much information concerning the Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, and so I started away. At the door, I met the sociable Wheeler returning, and he buttonholed me and recommenced. "Well, this 'ere Smiley had a yaller, one-eyed cow that didn't have no tail, only just a short stump like a banana, and..." However, lacking both time and inclination, I did not wait to hear about the afflicted cow, and took my leave. End of The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County by Mark Twain. Read by Kara Schallenberg, www.kray.org, on October 31st, 2007. I grew up in Calaveras County.
Down there. So here's my 1, 2, and 3. 57 frog is not quite ready.